This is part 2 of my rest of season fantasy football playoff rankings. Yesterday, I broke down wide receivers and running backs. I went through my top 36 of each position. If you want to check out that video, go ahead and do so. Today, I'm going to be breaking down my top 15 to 20 quarterbacks, top 15 or so tight ends, as well as my top 12 streaming defenses for the fantasy football playoffs so that you guys are wholeheartedly prepared to win your fantasy football championship. I'm sure you guys are as excited as I am for the fantasy football playoffs. If you are, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Now let's get into it. All right, so the reason I actually split this video up is because I wanted to go a little bit more in depth on quarterbacks and tight ends than I typically do, because if I had just grouped them in with the running backs and wide receivers, I would have just skimmed right through these guys. But I am excited to go kind of in depth on how these guys have progressed throughout the season, how I see them progressing throughout the playoffs, and all that good stuff. I'll break down their strength of schedules and how they've performed and everything in between. So we're going to start it off with the quarterback position, going through the elite quarterback ones. I got 3 guys in this top tier for the fantasy football playoffs. If you have Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, or Lamar Jackson, you should feel very, very good about your chances to win your fantasy football championship. With Josh Allen, he has been the quarterback one pretty much all season. He's never really relented off of that, averaging nearly 25 points per game. 6 of his last 7 performances, he's gone over 22 points per game as a Josh Allen manager in both of my redraft leagues. I got to tell you, it feels pretty good to just have a guy that you throw in your lineup, set it and forget it. He has a bottom half of the NFL schedule. Chargers are the only favorable game, but I do trust Allen each and every week against Dallas and New England in week 15 and week 17 respectively. Those are tougher matchups, but both of them are in Buffalo, so that's good for Allen, and he's just been good against whatever defense you throw at him. So Josh Allen is my quarterback 1. My number 2 quarterback in my rest of season playoff rankings I have here is Jalen Hurts, who has been the quarterback 2 on the year in fantasy production as well, so this does kind of work out well for him. He just had his worst game of the year against the Dallas Cowboys and probably his second worst game of the year against the 49ers the week before, but he does have a lot easier of matchups coming up this coming week. He has the Seahawks, and then after that he has the Giants and the Cardinals. So second easiest schedule among all fantasy quarterbacks. You definitely want to feel pretty good if you have Jalen Hurts as your starting quarterback. Lamar Jackson is the other guy that I'm grouping in with these 2 guys because his boom performances have just been absolutely outstanding, and these are the types of performances that you need in the fantasy football playoffs to get you over the hump, beat that week 15 tough opponent, week 16 tough opponent. You're not playing the slappies in your league anymore, and Lamar Jackson, the quarterback 4 on the year, but he has more number 1 overall finishes than anyone, including Josh Allen, including Jalen Hurts, but he does have a tougher schedule than those guys against the Jaguars this week, the 49ers in week 16, and the Miami Dolphins. But all 3 of those games should be higher over-unders. We know the Jags, 49ers, and Dolphins can score their own points respectively, and of course the Ravens are fighting for that number 1 seed, especially in that week 17 game against the Dolphins. That might be for the number 1 seed in the AFC. So Lamar Jackson, definitely the type of guy that you're going to want heading out your quarterback position. If you aren't as fortunate to have those guys, you should still feel pretty good about having Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, and Patrick Mahomes. Dak Prescott has the 9th easiest schedule among fantasy quarterbacks. Bills, Dolphins on the road, and then home for the Lions in week 17. All 3 of those games, those Cowboys implied point totals will probably be 25, 26, 27, 28 points. And Dak Prescott has been a top 5 quarterback in 6 of his last 8 games, which is absolutely absurd production. Top 5 numbers in 6 of your last 8 games is just high-level consistency, high-level performance. Since week 6, he is averaging over 26 points per game. Easily the quarterback 1 over that stretch. As good as Josh Allen has been, Dak Prescott has actually been better since week 6. Brock Purdy is the next guy here. He is my quarterback 5 in my rest of season playoff rankings here. Brock Purdy has 19 plus points in 10 of his 13 games. So he has been very, very consistent this year. 2 of those bad performances came around that concussion period. So even those 2 games, you could probably throw them out. And then he's basically had 1 dud all season. Over 22 points in 5 of his last 6 as well. The 49ers have a top 5 schedule for fantasy quarterbacks against the Cardinals this week. Baltimore Ravens in week 16. and the Washington Commanders in Week 17. The Ravens are definitely a tough matchup, but that should be a shootout potential game against potentially the number 1 seed in either conference. So Brock Purdy, 2 easy cupcake matchups, and then a high-scoring game environment. You'll love to see that for him. If you guys have him in your starting lineup, you should feel pretty good about that. Kyler Murray, my quarterback, 6 in my rest of season rankings, 18-plus points in 3 of his last 4 games since he's been back. He hasn't seen the ceiling quite yet. We haven't seen that massive, 25, 28-point performance from Kyler Murray that we know he's capable of, but another week where he can get healthy off of the bye this past week and some favorable game scripts and some favorable spots against the 49ers this week. It's a tough defense, but he should be playing from behind in that one. And then the Bears and the Eagles Week 16 and Week 17. So I really do trust Kyler Murray. If you guys are curious if you should trust Kyler Murray, you absolutely should, and you should even trust him over the likes of Patrick Mahomes, who was my quarterback 7 in my rest of season tier list here. I would love to put Mahomes higher on this list because he is the best quarterback in the league, but the reality is he's just not getting a whole lot of help this year. We've all seen it. We've watched, all these Chiefs games on prime time and, in the 4 o'clock windows, and he has just 2 top 5 weekly finishes this week. So if you're in need of that ceiling performance to get you over the top and win you a championship, unfortunately, right now, Patrick Mahomes is not your guy. Only 4 total games of over 20-plus points. He has been consistently in that 15 to 19 range, but that's not what you wanted when you drafted this guy in the 2nd round or wherever you drafted him. So the Chiefs' schedule is solid against the Patriots, against the Raiders, against the Bengals, but Mahomes is not an elite option rest of the season. He's a good option. He's an every-week starter, but he's not an elite option. And I think if you wanted to get even guttier, you could maybe start this next tier of guys over Mahomes, but I think conservatively, because he's the best quarterback in the league, I'm going to put him at quarterback 7 here. So the low-end quarterback ones, with these guys, you should be set at the position as well. I'm not really overly concerned about, streaming on one of their down weeks if I had one of these guys. Justin Fields is my quarterback 8 on my rest of season rankings here. The Browns this week, so tough matchup, but especially if you guys have a bye like I do in the one league that I have Justin Fields, you get the Cardinals and the Falcons in Week 16 and Week 17. Which is mighty juicy. Those 2 matchups alone, if you had a bye week, Justin Fields might be the quarterback 1 over that 2-game stretch. And remember how I just said Mahomes has like 4 games over 20 points? Justin Fields also has 4 games over 20 points, except Fields has missed like a month of football due to that thumb injury that he suffered a while ago. So the fact that Justin Fields has 3 games over 25 points is also just speaks to the fact that he is a superstar. He has that high ceiling that you're looking for. Trevor Lawrence is my next rated guy here. He had a dud against the Browns this past week, but he did post over 24 points per game in 3 straight games before last week. The Ravens are a tough matchup, like I said earlier, but Bucks and Panthers are the final 2 games that we have for Trevor Lawrence. So he is in a pretty good spot to be a good streamer. Tua Tagovailoa has not been good recently. One of his last 5 games, he's been over 20 points. The Dolphins have the single worst schedule of any fantasy quarterback. The Jets, which has weather implications apparently as well this week. Then he has the Dallas Cowboys, tough defense. Baltimore Ravens, another tough defense. So could be some higher scoring games against the Cowboys and against the Ravens, but very strong pass defenses. I don't think you have to start Tua Tagovailoa, especially if Tyreek Hill is going to be banged up or maybe even miss a game here. Tua Tagovailoa is not an every week starter, but I do think he's still like a low-end quarterback 1 if you don't have any other better options. Streamers and more streamers, I got these last 2 tiers listed as kind of just whatever your flavor is. What are you going for? What a goal are you trying to accomplish here? Matthew Stafford, Sam Howell, CJ Stroud, Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, and Jared Goff. That closes out my quarterback like 12 to 18 of my rankings. The ceilings have been high for some of these guys like Jordan Love, like Matthew Stafford, like CJ Stroud, Geno Smith, and Jared Goff, who all of those guys have combined for 14 performances of over 23 PPR points, but the floors have been low with a lot of those guys. Jordan Love, he has 4 of those games. He has the most of that group, but he has had a very low floor in a couple meltdown games. Matthew Stafford has 3 of those games, and actually 3 of them, all of them have come in the last 3 weeks. So with Matthew Stafford, he's playing hot right now. His weapons are healthy. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua doing their thing. So he is actually my favorite of this streaming group if you guys are in need of a streaming quarterback. Geno Smith has 3 performances of that as well. Assuming he's healthy, he's a great option as well. Then you have CJ Stroud, who has 3 of those performance also, but he doesn't have Tank Dell anymore, and he might not have Nico Collins, and he himself might miss some games. So he has to take a bit of a down, tick. If he had Nico Collins and Tank Dell still, he would probably be up in the tier with Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. And then with Jared Goff, he has just 2 of those performances, and he has been very bad in the month of December in years past because he doesn't have the greatest arm and he has small hands and all that kind of stuff. So with Jared Goff, not the greatest option. And then if you're looking for a little bit more consistency of this group, Sam Howell, Russell Wilson, and Baker Mayfield, to a lesser extent, have been far more consistent while still posting 6 combined big games of over 23 points in fantasy. 3 of those belonging to Sam Howell, who has been the best option. He's been the most consistent and the highest ceiling. 2 of those to Baker Mayfield. And then 1 of them to Russell Wilson, who's been kind of just even keel, not the highest ceiling, but pretty decent floor. As far as strength of schedule for these 8 streaming quarterbacks, in case you guys are curious, ranked easiest to hardest, you have Matthew Stafford at the easiest schedule here. Commanders, Saints, and Giants, he is the best option of these streaming quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, Lions, Patriots, and Chargers. Good streaming option, but like I said, not the highest ceiling guy with Russell Wilson. Geno Smith, Eagles, Titans, and Steelers, great streaming option there. Baker Mayfield, I probably wouldn't mess around with. He's like the last guy of this tier, but he does have the Packers, Jags, and Saints. CJ Stroud has the Titans twice and the Browns in between that, so not the greatest Week 16 matchup, but good in Week 15 and Week 17, assuming he plays. Jordan Love has the Bucks, the Panthers, the Vikings. Not the greatest matchups there, minus the Bucks this week. And then Jared Goff has the Broncos, Vikings, and Cowboys, tougher matchups there. And then Sam Howell, even though I think he's one of the safer options and one of the best options here, he does have the Rams, the Jets, and the 49ers. So he has the toughest schedule of this group of streamers. And then if I didn't mention the quarterback that you guys are rolling with, you probably need an upgrade. And quarterbacks 19 to 24 in my rankings in case the waiver wire is stripped barren or you're in a super flex league. Closing out my top 24, I have Will Levis at 19, Derek Carr at 20, Desmond Ridder at 21, Gardner Minshew at 22, Joe Flacco at 23 because of all the passing volume he's been getting, but he does have a tough schedule. And then Jake Browning at 24, also tough schedule, but he has been playing well. If you have to start these guys, Godspeed. I wish you luck, but aim for the better options on the wire if you can. But if you are starting these guys, you're probably in a deeper league or a super flex league or something like that. So before we get into the tight end and the defensive streamer positions, I do have to take a second to shout out our sponsors, Manscaped, and you guys will be hearing that message right now. Fellas, we all know how difficult it is to buy gifts for our fathers, for our brothers, for ourselves even. And Manscaped is the #1 place that you need to be at this holiday season. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming have just launched their 5th generation lawnmower to help you or your loved ones avoid another silent night in the bedroom. Get the best stocking stuffer this holiday season by going to manscaped.com and using the promo code BUSH for 20% off plus free shipping. Mrs. Claus will thank you. This holiday season, what could be better than giving the gift of good hygiene plus a couple of laughs? The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is the crown jewel of the holidays, and dare I say it's the best ball trimmer of all time. This electric razor's advanced skin-safe technology is a lifesaver and known for reducing nicks and cuts on Santa's sack. But the fun doesn't stop there. Anybody in the family have too much scruff? Look no further than the Manscaped Beard Hedger Pro Kit and Handyman Electric Face Shaver for all of his facial hair needs. Dad has nasty nose hairs or your brother has nasty nose hairs? Get him the Weed Whacker 2.0 nose and ear hair trimmer. This gift I'm going to wrap right when I'm done recording this ad read because I'm giving this to my brother this year. Hopefully he is not watching this, but it makes for a great gift and it's definitely affordable with our promo code BUSH. Of course, is their Boxer Game Week 2. They also have the Manscaped Boxers 2.0, the most comfortable boxers that you will ever wear to make sure that your boys have a house, as the great Cosmo Kramer once said. Have their nails seen better days? Manscaped has you covered with the Shears 3.0 nail grooming kit as well. Whatever your needs are for your brother, for your father, for yourself, for your husband, whoever you are buying for this holiday season, head on over to manscaped.com and make sure you use the promo code BUSH for 20% off plus free shipping. That is manscaped.com, promo code BUSH, and say ho, ho, ho to a well-groomed mistletoe with Manscaped. All right, so big shout out to Manscaped. Again, promo code BUSH gets you 20% off plus free shipping. Still time to get those special guys in your life a Christmas present they will absolutely have a chuckle about and also really, really need as well. So let's get into the tight end position. I'll skim through these guys a little bit faster than I went over the quarterbacks just because I wanted to cover our super flex bros in the audience here. The elite tight ends, you guys probably know who they are. Travis Kelce has been typically like in his own stratosphere, in his own tier in years past, but that's not really been the case this year. This year, 22% target share, which is down 4% from last season. One thing I noticed when looking into his numbers last year and his numbers this year and why he seems so much worse than he was last year, number one, the big plays have been down. That could be as a result of him getting older and, losing a step or whatever. But he also only has a 19% target share on 3rd and 4th downs versus a 30% target share on 3rd and 4th downs last season. So Mahomes, his go-to guy last year on 3rd and 4th downs was Kelce. Maybe defenses are taking him away more this year. I'm not exactly sure how that's working itself out. But nonetheless, Travis Kelce definitely not as good as he was last year, but he is still my tight end 1 rest of the season. Patriots, Raiders, and Bengals. That is actually the 4th easiest schedule. And the Bengals, who he has in the Week 17 matchup, are the single easiest matchup for all fantasy tight ends. So Travis Kelce, even though I want to put him lower than this, he's still the best tight end in fantasy as it currently stands. Sam Laporta is my number 2 tight end rest of the season, 21% target share. Again, he's a rookie, so that's just absolutely absurd. 27% 3rd and 4th down target share. He has been Jared Goff's go-to guy. 8 or more targets in 2 of his last 3 games as well, and a top 3 easiest strength of schedule at tight end versus the Broncos this week, the Vikings, and the Cowboys. Even though the Vikings and Cowboys have been good pass defenses in general, they are susceptible to the fantasy tight end position. So Sam Laporta definitely in a good spot there. George Kittle is my tight end 3 rest of season, just a 21% target share, but a nearly 10 average depth of target. So he gets those big plays. He gets the downfield looks. We've seen that from George Kittle with those boom performances. 29% of the 49ers end zone targets is also an absurd number for such a great offense. Somewhat challenging schedule, but the Cardinals, Ravens, and Commanders are good for anyone, regardless if they may be strong at tight ends. As I talked about already, Cardinals, Ravens, and Commanders, you got 2 easy matchups, and you got a potential shootout in Week 16, like I said, for Brock Purdy. He's also had 6 top 5 weeks this year, which is the same as Travis Kelce. So like I said, with George Kittle, you're going to have to live with the floor games to get the ceiling games. And in the fantasy playoffs, you just got to hope that he runs hot like he did last year. TJ Hawkinson, the last of these elite tight ends, 25% target share. So actually leading the position in target share right now, but definitely a worse offense than the rest of the guys that I'm talking about, especially with Jaron Hall or Nick Mullins, whoever ends up being the quarterback because Josh Dobbs has been benched. Tight end 2 right now on the season, but I am a little bit concerned given the offensive situation, plus Justin Jefferson should be back this week. It is a top 5 schedule with the cake matchup of the Cincinnati Bengals this week. So obviously, if you need a win this week, TJ Hawkinson should be one of my best tight end ranked options in Week 15. Every week starters, David Njoku, Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride, and Evan Ingram. If you don't have those elite options, these guys are still very solid. David Njoku, 21% target share this year, and his average depth of target the last 3 games with Joe Flacco has been 6.5, 7.3 and 7.7, as opposed to it being a measly 3 yards for the rest of the season. So with David Njoku, he's getting a lot more downfield looks, getting a lot more big play upside, and he has the Bears, the Texans, and the Jets, which is a top 12 schedule among fantasy tight ends. So with David Njoku, he could be one of those guys that wins some people some leagues. Dalton Kincaid, everybody's all up in arms about Dalton Kincaid saying, oh, well, Dawson Knox is back now, so I guess Dalton Kincaid's season is over. But 86% of the routes and a 19% target share in the first game that Dawson Knox has been back for seems just fine to me. So I'm not concerned at all about Dawson Knox. I think he is the second tight end on this offense now. He's going to play a 40-50% snap share, mostly as a blocker. 13.57 PPR points per game is what Dalton Kincaid has been averaging since Week 7. That's a top 5 tight end over that stretch and top 10 schedule for the tight end position with the Cowboys, the Chargers, and the Patriots the rest of the way. If you have Dalton Kincaid, don't be worried about Dawson Knox. He is still an every week starter in my opinion. Trey McBride, also a very solid option since Week 8. Trey McBride is actually averaging over 16 PPR points per game. He has the 7th best schedule among fantasy tight ends against the 49ers, the Bears, and the Eagles. I'm sure a lot of people would argue I have him too low, but I like the upside of David Njoku and Dalton Kincaid a little bit more as far as the big play upside, but the targets per game, if you guys are in any kind of like PPR tight end premium, Trey McBride would probably vault his way all the way up and potentially into the elite tight ends tier, but at the very least, the top of this tier. Evan Ingram, also also been very good this year, 23% target share. That is second among all tight ends. 2 elite weeks in a row, 23 and 33 PPR points. Tight end 3 on the season. It is a tough schedule against the Ravens, Bucks, and Panthers rest of the season. That's a bottom 5 schedule among fantasy tight ends, but Evan Ingram is an integral part of this offense, so he should be an every week starter for you. And then closing out the rest of the tight end position, I got the spike week merchants. We got Dallas Goedert, Jake Ferguson, Taysom Hill, and Cole Kmet. All of these guys are like top 12-ish options. With Dallas Goedert, he probably has the most ceiling of this group because he's now back from injury. He's on the Philadelphia Eagles, but it is a bottom 2 schedule for tight ends rest of season, so we might see a lot more of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith as opposed to Dallas Goedert. With Jake Ferguson, he's had a couple big weeks this year. Top 8 schedule of Buffalo, Miami, and Detroit. Also very high game script, very high scoring potential in those games as well. So Jake Ferguson is a pretty good option. With Taysom Hill, of course, we know he's a do-it-all threat. Derek Carr is kind of banged up right now. That bodes well for Taysom Hill. And then with Cole Kmet, with Justin Fields back on the field, we know that Cole Kmet is a threat to have those 2 touchdown games, and he is the type of guy that is commanding targets. He's the tight end 7 on the year, and his offense also has a chance to run hot down the stretch. And then any of these other upside options, Dalton Schultz, Darren Waller, Pat Freiermuth, and Kyle Pitts, they're good options, but I would prefer to have somebody better. Easiest schedules among this group goes to Darren Waller if he's back. He has the number 1 schedule according to all fantasy tight ends, Saints, Eagles, and Rams. And then we have Kyle Pitts, who has the Panthers, Colts, and Bears, which is 8th among fantasy tight ends. And then the hardest schedule of this group goes to Dalton Schultz, who has the Titans twice and the Browns. And the Titans are actually really good at defending tight ends. Even though they're really bad against wide receivers, they have been good against tight ends. And then streaming options, I mean, Tucker Kraft, Logan Thomas, Cade Otton, you probably want a better option than this if you're trying to win your fantasy championship. But if you suffered a Mark Andrews injury or whatever, I don't blame you. And Isaiah Likely would also fit into that category of a streamer as well. And then finally, let's go rapid fire on some defenses here. I don't want to leave out you sickos that still play with defenses in your league. You guys can see how I have these defenses tiered. So I have the elite defenses, meaning they're really good real life and fantasy defenses, plus they have good matchups. These are the cream of the crop: the Browns, the 49ers, the Jets, and the Broncos. These are the guys that you want. Then I have the same color of a tier for either great streamers who might not be the greatest defenses in the world, but they are good for fantasy and they do have great matchups. And then I have the really good real life defenses that don't have good matchups, but you can still trust them because the Cowboys, the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Jaguars are good real life defenses. And then I have, just ranked my remaining defenses that if you miss out on all of the options above, you can go after them as well. So really quick rapid fire on these schedules to give you guys a good idea of what defenses are good. We have the Cleveland Browns, my number 1 defense for the rest of the year. Bears, Texans, which is minus Tank Dell and potentially CJ Stroud and Nico Collins as well. And then Zach Wilson in the championship round. The Browns are the cream of the crop defense that you're going to want. Plus, they're an elite defense in real life. The 49ers, also an elite defense in real life and a fantasy defense this year. Cardinals, Ravens, and Commanders on the docket. The Jets defense is my number 3. Dolphins this week in a weather game, which could keep that low scoring. And then the Commanders and Browns rest of the season. My number 4 defense closing out this tier is the Broncos, who have been much better over the last 8 games. The Lions, Patriots, and the Justin Herbert-less Chargers are the guys that they have to go up against there. And then with the Rams kicking off the great streamers tier, they actually have the easiest schedule for fantasy defenses on my matchup charts. 2 of those games at home against the Commanders, the Saints, and the Giants. Number 6 defense, we have the Packers. They have the Bucks, Panthers, and Vikings, which are all, turnover-prone quarterbacks that you can target. Number 7 defense in my rankings here are the Chiefs. They have the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Bengals closing out week 16 and week 17 at home in Arrowhead as well. Then the Colts are my number 8 defense. They have the Steelers, Falcons, and Raiders. Number 9 defense, kicking off the good defenses but bad matchups here, so you can still play these guys because they're good real life defenses. We have the Cowboys, tough matchups against the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Lions. Also on the road for 2 of those games as well. Number 10, we have the Baltimore Ravens. They've been a top 5 real-life defense this year, but the Jaguars, 49ers, and Dolphins are brutal schedule, and they're on the road twice in that stretch. The Steelers' defense also been pretty good this year. Colts, Bengals, and Seahawks. None of these QBs really scare you, but all of these teams can score points, and you also have your toughest matchup, Week 17 in Seattle, with Geno Smith there being able to put up points in Week 17. And then finally, closing up my top 12, we have the Jaguars. Tough matchup, Week 15 versus Baltimore, but in Week 16 and Week 17 versus Baker Mayfield and Jordan Love, that's pretty solid. And anyone I didn't mention that you guys can see I have them ranked there. The Saints, the Bears, the Texans, and the Falcons are your next best options. But when in doubt, if you didn't see your defense here, simple formula to follow is this. Ideally, we want to attack bad quarterbacks, bad defense, or bad offenses who, can't move the ball and who are going to turn the ball over and not score a lot of points. Ideally, we want a team that's at home. Ideally, we want a team that's in a low over-under game who's maybe favored to win the game with potential weather implications. And ideally, we also want a great real-life NFL defense who's maybe been good for fantasy this year. The more of those boxes you can check, the better. And that's probably going to lead you towards using your defense to help you win a fantasy championship. So hopefully this video was helpful for you. This was kind of like the streamers version of the video I did yesterday. Again, make sure to check that video out if you didn't see it. Running backs and wide receivers, I went in depth on my top 36 at each position. And then today, this was kind of the streamers video, quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses. So if you enjoyed this video, if I gave you some value, leave a like down below. If I did give you some value and you enjoy the content that you've been seeing around here, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Definitely check out our bonus content as well over at flockfantasy.com. You can get a bonus video every single week. Last week, we broke down our early top 5 quarterbacks for the 2024 draft. This week, we're going to be breaking down our top 5 pass catchers for the 2024 draft. Me and Danny have been, studying in the film room. We also have Dynasty trade strategy and, trade targets by position live right now on the site. So that's 3 bonus videos and a 4th one coming that you will get if you sign up over on Flock Fantasy using the promo code FSE. You'll get a 30% off discount on an annual package. You get 6 months for free. And when you sign up for an annual package, you'll get a free Zoom consultation with myself or with Danny. We can break down your specific dynasty teams, your fantasy teams into the fantasy playoffs. I'm sure you guys really want to take home those championships. So really take advantage of that deal right now. You get a free Zoom consultation by signing up for an annual subscription using the promo code FSE. That will be linked down below in the pinned comment. Another big shout out to Manscaped for sponsoring the last 2 videos. Make sure to get your Christmas shopping finished up. If you have a father, a brother, your husband, significant other, yourself, whoever that you need to shop for, definitely check out manscaped.com and use the promo code BUSH for 20% off plus free shipping. But with that being said, peace out and we'll talk to you soon.